Welcome to this polymer clay tutorial with a shot glass. It's super fun and I really hope that you enjoy it. Please hit that subscribe button if you do, and there are so many different techniques you can learn. They're a little bit weird and wacky. Never fear if you don't have a shot glass handy, because all of these skills you can use to make this smaller one. So please watch through to the end to learn those skills, and you can click on the links at the end if you want to make it. You can put anything in these egg stands. They're super handy. So let's get started. Here's our shot glass, and it can be any shape, size, whatever you would like. And it can even be a huge drinking glass if you've got a huge crystal bowl. Just go wild. Getting our clay out of the pasta machine, use very well conditioned clay. I'm just using a tissue blade to take away the edges and kneaded it up a little bit. And I've got some Sculpey TLS, translucent liquid Sculpey, that I'm going to use to stick this clay onto the edges of the glass. So put that on quite liberally, and then we're going to attach the clay, and do that by pushing from the bottom all the way up. As you can see, I'm tapping it with my finger to make sure that we can get out any air, so that any air doesn't get trapped in there rather. And do the same to the other side, and just keep trying to tap around, tap that air out, make sure that we don't get any mooning effect, which is not fantastic. And you can see I kind of misjudged the measurement for the clay around the glass. That's fine, I'm just cutting a little piece to kind of fill that in. That's no worries whatsoever, and it's going to be covered with lots of decorations anyway, so it's no biggie. And we'll just smooth it down, and you won't even be able to tell the gap was there. So I'm just chopping off the excess. And just so you know, when I condition my clay, I usually put it through the machine maybe about 20 or 30 times. I usually always add a little bit of Vaseline or baby oil or TLS, and it helps to make it nice and soft and helps to condition it and get it ready, so it's really easy to work with and ultra sticky, which is what you want. And I'm just blending this in and just neatening up the edge on the top with the tissue blade, which is also quite sharp. And it's always a good idea when you're conditioning your sheets of clay, which we do a lot in the pasta machine, getting sheets of clay ready, is to always put the folded side through first, so you're not collecting any air in the clay while you are running it through the pasta machine, because you'll get little tiny air pockets or maybe big air pockets. And yeah, if you're a little bit of a perfectionist, you may not like that. Anyway, I'm just smoothing out the edges here with my fingers. So well done. If you've got this far, let's put some more TLS on the top. You can use Bake and Bond or TLS, they're pretty much exactly the same thing. And I've got a Sculpey circle cutter here. I think it's about 5 centimeters in diameter, and we're just going to pop that right onto the bottom of the shot glass and push it down. And just as we did before, we're pushing the air outwards, from the center outwards, and just making sure that's really well bonded. And because your clay is nice and conditioned, it is going to stick to any other clay that it comes in contact with, which is fantastic because it takes away so much work. This is why polymer clay is so brilliant. Now we're going to move on to making a larger dome, followed by a smaller dome. And once we've made both of them and put them on light globes, we'll bake them in the oven together. And I'm moving on to creating a circle that we're going to bake on a light globe, which is so much fun. This is an incandescent light globe with a filament in it. It's the safest light globe that you can use to bake in the oven. However, I did test a halogen light globe as well, and that was perfectly fine. I've baked on that many times, and I just popped it into a shot glass to keep it vertical. So it's the dome that we're going to make is nice and safe in the oven. And I've got myself some more clay through the pasta machine, and I'm just smoothing it out a little bit with my finger before I put it onto the globe. Anyway, I've got another Sculpey circle cutter, so you can make these domes as big as you want. Mine was about 5 centimeters. I've got a flexible tissue blade and I'm going to take it off the tile from the side. And just before, you saw a little flash of some other egg stands that you can make on my channel. So please subscribe if you're interested in learning how to make those. There's even a little baby dragon. So I really hope that you enjoy that. Just getting back to this tutorial, you can check how perfect your circle is by popping the circle cutter or cookie cutter or whatever you're using to get that shape, or glass. But just don't drink out of that glass again. Nah, it's not a good idea. Anyway, I'm just smoothing the edges and neatening this up and marking a little dot in the middle. Don't worry, that's going to be covered up later on. So yeah, just getting a rough idea of where the center is. It's not going to make too much difference. You don't have to like labor away trying to get it in the dead center of the light globe or anything. It's still going to look amazing and be fantastic. And just as before, I'm just really gently working from the middle all the way out to the edges to avoid those pesky little air bubbles again. So we do this quite a lot with these egg stands. So working all the way from center and out and all around very gently. And you can see I've got gloves on, and it's not you know, making any marks or impressions in the clay. So that's really cool and really handy because I have really bad dermatitis and eczema. So yeah, I like to wear gloves as much as possible. And a lot of this is the underside of the dome too, so you don't have to be too panickety pants about it. It's almost ready for the oven, but we're going to first clean up the edges just a smidge. And the way I'm going to do that is to use a shaper tool. You can use a paintbrush with some isopropyl alcohol 99%, a very soft sable or synthetic brush, and that will do the same kind of thing for you. However, if you wanted to shape it a little bit more and there are a few dings in there that you're like, whoa, how did I do that? You may want to use a shaper tool or something that's going to have a bit more force in pushing that clay around and showing it who's boss. Smooth the top down a little with your finger, and then we'll set this larger dome aside and start on the smaller dome now. I'm just going to show you how you can bake your other dome on a different stand and with a different method using Glad Wrap. So this is a little cardboard stand that came with the light globes, which is super handy. Yeah, as I showed you before, if you don't have one of those, just use a shot glass or a glass or anything like a ceramic mug or something to stand it up in, and it will be 100% fine in the oven. Now this is our second dome that we're moving on to here, and I've applied a piece of Glad Wrap over the clay before I push in my Sculpey circle cutter. And you're probably wondering, why are you doing this? What's going on? And the reason why is that it really leaves a beautiful, smooth, rounded edge on one side. So it kind of cuts down half the work. And yeah, it's really handy. It just, yeah, it saves you a lot of kind of messing around. Got a tissue blade, just neatened up the edges a bit there and taking it off the tile. And so I'm checking the circle, that it's pretty circular to me. And then all I have to do is neaten up the underside, the edge that was underneath. And you can see how smooth and beautiful that other edge turned out. So now we're going to pop it onto the light globe. I didn't mark a little point for the center for this one. I just guesstimated it, and we're using exactly the same technique. Slow-mo, woo! So you can see it's a little, I'm actually rotating it in my hand as I'm tapping it very lightly down with my thumb. And just cleaning up a few little bits and pieces. You can take your time and just clean it up how you would like to. You can use your finger to smooth. I'm actually using my fingernail, which is a great tool to smooth out any blemishes. And another great idea is to use the heel of your palm just to smooth over, because it's a really large surface area and it's not going to leave fingerprints. If you don't like fingerprints, this is a really handy technique you can use. And this will be your first bake. So anyway, that's been baked in the oven as well as the other little dome, and I'm just going to show you. That little green one was for something else, so just let's pretend that's not there. Anyway, I'm just showing you how I take it off the globe, and it's a little bit of a process, and that's why I haven't sped this up, because I really want to give you an idea of how long it takes and how gentle and patient you need to be. So we don't want to put too much pressure on the globe itself, because obviously it will crack and we could yeah, be a little bit injured by that. So, and I'm not digging my fingernails into the edge of it either, because that damages it. And this here is a really good way to show you. You can see the writing of the light globe in that reflection, and you can play this back and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But when you put plastic onto a surface, it will pick up the qualities of that surface, and polymer clay is made of plasticizers. So because it had some writing on it and it was shiny, that's what ended up on the clay. And so anyway, you can see here I'm sticking the dome into the bottom of the shot glass. I've used the TLS again to do that. And I've got the second baked dome ready to go. And that's going to go on top of that. So it's like a double dome technique. And I'm being very generous with the TLS on this, because we want a really nice strong bond. It's not raw clay. We're joining together two bits of baked clay. So I'd be even more generous when you're joining baked clay to baked clay, because it doesn't have that natural ability to stick. And there we go. We've got the base of our shot glass stand here. It's looking good. Well done. Well done if you've got this far. Now we're moving on to decorating it a little bit more, because there is that shiny kind of writing from the light globe. That's why I've got a very thin sheet of an aqua colored polymer clay that I'm using the Sculpey circle cutter for again, to actually cover up that shininess and that writing. If it bothers you, you know, you may want to cover it up. If it doesn't, you can just leave it how it is, because it's going to have an egg or something on it anyway. So it will probably be covered up. But if you're a little bit panickety pants like me, you may want to actually add this layer. And it is another element of decoration, which is quite lovely to look at and is a good contrast. So now we're sticking wet clay to baked clay, and we're going to get out the trusty TLS to do this as well. And I'm being very generous with it, as you can see, and we're using the same technique of pushing down in the center first. And you're really going to learn that in this tutorial, hey, that you really need to push down in the center first and then use your finger to gently push out to the edges and get all the air out so nothing gets trapped. And it's just the lightest, most feathery little touch that I'm using to do that. And you can see it's just popped in there nicely. Isn't it good when that happens? Here I have a texture sponge, and you can buy lots of different types of sponges, and there's lots of different things that you could use to texture this part of your stand. You could use a texture stamp before you actually apply it to the glass if you wanted to. You could stick anything you wanted in there. You could press any kind of texture from like a candle or some kind of decorative design. Just look at all the objects around your house and go, I wonder what would happen if I stuck my clay on that. And I think it's a really cool kind of fun project to do and just get different impressions from different surfaces. Here I've got a teardrop cutter, and you can see I've added lots of embellishments down the bottom. I've basically just rolled some balls, squidged them on there, and you don't need any of the TLS or Bacon Bond because I was joining raw to raw clay as I'm doing here. You'll see with this teardrop shape. And so I've cut out a whole lot of these teardrop shapes with my cutter and just pushing them, and that's how they bond, is just by pushing them gently with raw onto raw clay. And you can just go a little bit bananas. You could do little balls and squish them all the way up to the top of your shot glass if you wanted to. And it just depends what you've got lying around you. Don't have to have a cutter. You could actually cut these shapes out with a knife if you wanted to. This is what I'm talking about with like finding textures and impressions and things. This is just a bit of like raggedy looking shell that I collected from the beach, and it is just giving a little bit more texture than the sponge. I wanted it to kind of have a little bit more impression to it. And yeah, just use anything that you want to. A toothbrush would work well, some scrunched up aluminium foil, just anything that you have lying around. So I really like this kind of texture here. Anyway, here's some amethyst crystal chips, and I'm just adding some TLS, and the reason why I'm doing that is because we're not joining a piece of clay to a piece of clay. It's actually a foreign object, so it needs that extra strength of having the TLS in there. And I'm even pushing it down even further to make even more of a bond, and a little bit of what they call a mechanical bond, which is where you push it in so far that the clay starts to come up around the edges, so it can't kind of come out anymore because it's got it up and around the edges. So if you think about when you've got a cut stone in a ring and how it has the little claws around it to keep it in, it's kind of like that, but we're doing that with clay. So yeah, if it's not pushed in enough, this piece of these little tiny parts of TLS will keep them stuck in there really, really well. And you can see I'm adding some of the aqua clay little balls and rolling them before I push them in, the little gaps. And just play around and experiment with any little patterns that you like. I only put a couple of amethyst crystals in the bottom, but I think less is more a lot of the time with my own personal design aesthetic. And but sometimes more is good too. And this is a dotting tool that I'm using to make those little tiny dots. This is a Kemper cutter tool, and it makes little teardrop shapes really, really easily. I love this tool. I use it for so many different things, and you can get it in so many different shapes. You can get love hearts, circles, squares, and it just takes all of the hard work out of making nice little shapes and things. And so you can simply just push them onto your clay. Just gently pat them down, and this is what I've ended up with the decorations. You can see I did some silver up the top, and please stick around to click on the links so that you can learn how to make lots of really amazing other stands, including baby dragons and all types of things. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.